The moment you believe that status will naturally come to those with talent, you have walked straight into the sweetest trap society has ever set. Imagine this. A person spends a decade honing skills, sharpening abilities, doing everything by the book, sitting quietly in the corner of the room like a soldier waiting to be called. He opens his mouth to say the most correct, sharpest, and timeliest thing, but his words sink to the floor like a heavy object, drifting to the bottom of the water. No eyes linger, no faces stir. His excellence quietly dies before it can even breathe. Then someone else walks in, not particularly skilled, not particularly profound, even lacking anything standout beyond absolute ordinariness. But the room turns toward him, as if gravity has just shifted direction. They listen to him. They react to his every small movement. They nod, they consider, they remember. Why? Why is a mediocre person treated like the center, while the talented one dissolves like air? Because status is not based on talent. It is based on perception, and perception is a blind beast, chasing only whatever hits its senses the hardest. Machiavelli saw this back in the 16th century. People do not judge by truth, but by impression, not by essence, but by signals. And that is why the talented remain invisible. They believe talent shines by itself, but their light is feeble against the storm of signals others emit. They do not know how to create frame. They enter the room asking themselves, "Am I good enough?" while others enter with an unspoken declaration, "Look at me." They do not know how to leverage social context, where everyone is sizing up each other's position, like predators evaluating the weakest prey. They do not understand how people assign value, not based on depth, but on visibility, not on actual strength, but on the feeling of strength. And when you fail to grasp these mechanisms, your talent becomes a whisper swallowed by the wind. This is the truth most people never dare face. The world does not reward the most skilled. It rewards the one who shapes how it is perceived. It is not the Mozart of the room who is remembered, but the one who knows how to create social gravity. It is not the most excellent who takes the podium, but the one who makes others believe he deserves to stand there. If you have ever walked through the rooms of your life, feeling like you disappear even when you try to shine, it is not because your talent is lacking. It is because you are still playing a game whose rules others read before you did. And the only question left is, if talent does not determine status, then what does? Status does not begin with your words, but from the very first moment you step into a space and unconsciously force everyone to decide where you stand in the power ecosystem. In the social game, whoever frames first holds the advantage, and most people fail, not because they lack ability, but because they step into a room that already belongs to someone else. From the second they touch the doorknob, imagine you push open the door to a meeting room. You have not said anything yet, but the room has already reacted. A few eyes glance at you, the conversation rhythm slows, the atmosphere shifts, as if an invisible force has just changed the center of gravity. If you carry the right frame, the room adjusts to you. If you have no frame, you adjust to the room. That is the decisive intersection for status. Machiavelli understood this clearly. People do not react to essence, but to leading energy. An ordinary person who enters as if he has the right to be there will be treated entirely differently from a skilled person who enters with the mindset, "I hope I fit in." Frame is the wordless declaration. This is how I allow you to see me. It is not aggressive attitude, not showing superiority, but the ability to occupy the context before others can label you. And this does not require talent, it requires strategy. First strategy: move slower than the room's rhythm. The hurried are always seen as followers, as people looking for a place to stand. The slow ones force others to calibrate their pace to match them. This is tempo dominance. Whoever controls the rhythm controls the power dynamic. Second strategy: observe for 3 seconds before speaking. These 3 seconds of silence are a psychological strike. They signal that you are not driven by the need for acceptance. They force others to fill the gap with anticipation. The quick speaker is always seen as someone seeking attention. The one who waits makes attention come to him. Third strategy: keep your voice low, steady, unhurried. A high and fast voice makes you sound like someone trying to prove something. A low voice forces others to quiet down to hear, and in that silence, you are presumed to hold higher status. Fourth strategy: use silence as pressure. When you stop speaking after a question or comment, others will immediately adjust to fill the void. They explain more, they expose themselves, and they unconsciously surrender control to you. In the workplace, you will see that the person holding frame is not the loudest speaker, but the one who makes others wait for his words. In social communication, it is not the one telling the most stories, but the one who makes others want to tell stories to him. In the hierarchy of power, groups always seek a psychological anchor to position each person's role. The one who frames first is defaulted into the higher position, not because of talent, but because he leads the context. A single sentence from him carries more weight than a long paragraph from someone else. This is the truth you need to understand. Status does not come from the ability you possess, but from the context you create. You do not need talent to be respected. You only need to make others step into your frame. If frame is the first lever that lets you enter a room with new status, then deliberate scarcity is the second lever that makes others raise your value without you needing to prove anything. In every market, from goods, currency, to people, one unchanging law always holds. What appears too often loses value. What is rare becomes valuable. This is not lofty philosophy. It is a survival reflex etched into the human brain for thousands of years. And this is also why 99% of people unintentionally destroy their own status. They are too accessible, too willing, too present, too quick, too eager. That excess causes their value to plummet without them even noticing. Machiavelli once said, "A person who appears too frequently becomes commonplace in the eyes of others." People do not value what is always available. They value what is absent. They raise the value of what makes them wait. And in social status, deliberate absence is the most powerful tool to make others assume you have higher value than you actually do. So how do you create scarcity strategically, without seeming arrogant? First, reduce frequency of access. When you are always available, always agreeing, always showing up, you unintentionally teach others that your presence is a given, and anything taken for granted loses value. When you appear less, they start observing you more. When you speak less, they start listening more. Second, do not reply immediately. The person who responds too quickly is always seen as lower status, as someone trying to prove their usefulness. The person who responds slowly, calmly, with buffer, is seen as someone with options, with priorities, and with a life not revolving around others' requests. This slowness is not mind games, it is a value signal. Third, do not appear overly eager. Eagerness is a sign of scarcity. When you are too enthusiastic about every invitation, every small opportunity, you reveal the truth. You need them more than they need you. But when you hold back 20% energy, 20% unpredictability, when you appear selectively, you shift from the position of supplicant to the position of being pursued. Fourth, cultivate the image of always busy with bigger goals. You do not need to brag about being busy. Your reduced presence, reduced interaction, reduced reaction already says it. People with big goals live by their own schedule, and this very inaccessibility makes others inflate their value on their own. In psychology, this is called the gap effect. When information is missing, the brain fills it with assumptions, and those assumptions tend to be positive if you already have a strong frame beforehand. Real life proves this every day. When a colleague who was always present now appears less. Every time he enters the room, people pay more attention. When someone who used to talk a lot now talks little, every word of theirs becomes an information anchor. When someone who always nodded now selectively appears only in important situations, they are instantly seen as someone with weight, not because they suddenly became more talented, but because their rarity forces others to revalue them. This is the paradox of power. Sometimes you raise your value not by adding, but by subtracting. Subtract presence, subtract words, subtract reactions, subtract predictability. And it is precisely in the space you create that your status begins to grow. Scarcity is the framework that lifts status high, even when you do not have superior talent. If deliberate scarcity makes others raise your value on their own, then Machiavelli's third lever is even stronger. Stand next to power to borrow its light. Machiavelli understood a truth that most of humanity never accepts. Status is not self-generated. It is reflected from those you stand beside. People do not judge you based on your essence, but on the social associations surrounding you. They unconsciously ask themselves, who are you standing with? Do influential people consider you worth talking to? Who pays attention to you? Who spends time on you? In the invisible power structure, you are not positioned by your own introduction, but by the attitude of higher status people when they see you. Status propagates the way light passes through a prism. It refracts, bends, magnifies or shrinks your image, depending on the light source you are near. And this is why the crowd will always pull you down to average. The crowd cannot lift you up, because the crowd is society's lowest measure. They are governed by the need for conformity, by the fear of being different, by collective psychology that makes every individual fade into blandness. Meanwhile, people with power, whether in a company, in society, or in any group, operate on an entirely different logic. They shape context, lead rhythm, set standards, and simply by standing near them, you are seen with different eyes. And this requires no talent at all. It requires strategy. So what is the Machiavellian strategy? First, get close proximity to influential people. No need to flatter, no need to cozy up, no need to pretend to know them. Just appear in the right place, at the right time, at the right distance. A glance exchanged, a short conversation, an interaction in front of the crowd, all send stronger signals than any self-introduction. People judge you by your position on the social map, not by what you tell them. Second, synchronize their rhythm and body language. Powerful people move slowly, speak little, look directly, do not react hastily. When you mirror these traits, you tune into their frequency. Psychology calls this mirroring, the reflection that makes the other person unconsciously see you as belonging to the same level. When you sync the right rhythm, you are no longer seen as an outsider. You are recognized as being in the same orbit. Third, become useful rather than noisy. Powerful people do not need more noise. They need someone who understands quickly, acts cleanly, demands little, and creates no drama. You do not need extraordinary talent to become useful. You only need clear thinking, fast action, and no added friction. Powerful people keep very few people close, and they keep those who make their lives easier, not more complicated. When you become the person who reduces load, they will open doors for you that you could never push open yourself. The psychology of all this is very simple. Status is contagious. It is not created by individual effort, but by the way society reflects you through those at higher levels. And when you are reflected by power, you are instantly elevated. When you are reflected by the crowd, you are instantly lowered. Look at reality. In a company, those who gather with the complaining group, no matter their ability, are seen as part of the problem. But the person who simply stands near leadership, even saying nothing, is always seen as someone with weight. In society, Those who choose friends with direction, not loud, not idle, not chaotic, are always perceived differently from those drifting with the just-for-fun group. Status is not the story of solitary individual effort. It is the story of strategic proximity, and this is the coldest truth you need to accept. Power is a highly contagious disease. Stand close to the right people, and you do not need talent. You just need to be there. If standing next to power allows you to be reflected at a higher level, then the fourth lever, the art of signaling, makes others write your story for you the very moment they lay eyes on you. Status does not come from who you are, how skilled you are, or what you have accomplished. It comes from how others perceive you in the first second their eyes meet yours. And as Machiavelli once said, men judge more by their eyes than by their hands. They do not have time to analyze you. They only have time to feel you. And they will feel the wordless signals emanating from the tiniest details of your presence. Signals that determine whether you enter with high or low status. Status signals are not expensive watches, luxury cars, or flashy displays. They are small details with such immense weight that the other person's brain cannot ignore them. Minimalist yet sharp clothing, slow and deliberate movements, steady, unwavering eye contact, silence placed in exactly the right moments. These signals say far more than any introduction you could utter. Understand this. The human brain forms a first impression in 100, 200 milliseconds. That means even before you can say hello, the other person has unconsciously placed you into one of two categories, high value or ordinary. And from that second onward, everything you say is filtered through that initial impression. If the signals you emit are weak, you will have to fight to prove your value. If the signals you emit are strong, others will do the rest themselves. They will assign you intelligence, confidence, composure, even talent you never mentioned. Why? Because the brain hates informational voids. When it does not know enough about you, it fills the gaps with assumptions that match the signals you send. A person dressed sharp and clean, moving slowly and deliberately, with steady eyes, the brain automatically interprets, he has discipline, he knows what he's doing, he's not afraid of anyone. Conversely, a person dressed sloppily, moving hurriedly, with shifting eyes, the brain instantly concludes, this person is lower status. You said nothing, but your body has already spoken for you. And in the game of status, the body always has the loudest voice. Take an example, in a job interview. The candidate who talks a lot, tries to persuade, tries to impress, is often seen as lacking confidence. But the candidate who answers concisely, without haste, keeps a steady tone, and maintains eye contact, is seen as someone with weight. The certainty does not lie in the words, it lies in the signals of muscle, breath, and pace. In society, it is the same. The person who interrupts, laughs too loudly, talks too much about themselves, will always be placed in the lower tier. The person who is silent at the right moments, does not boast, does not react too quickly, is seen as higher. Not because they truly are superior, but because they emit the signals of someone superior. Signaling is the language of micro-intuitions, where people rely on instinct to judge who is the leader and who is the follower. You cannot beg for status. You must signal status. Remember, people do not believe what you say. They believe the feeling your presence makes them experience. That feeling comes from minimalism. Because complexity is the signal of someone lacking control. Slow movement, because the hurried is the one afraid of being left behind. Steady gaze, because the unsteady is the weak. Deliberate silence, because the one who cannot tolerate silence is the one who needs validation. You do not need superhuman skills to build status. You only need to emit the right signals, strong enough and clear enough, to force the other person's nervous system to respond. And when the signal is strong enough, you do not need to tell your story. The world will tell that story for you. When you master these 4 levers, A silent but ferocious rebirth begins. You are no longer your old self. The one who talked too much, appeared too often, tried too hard to prove everything. You become a different entity, quieter but heavier, less present yet drawing every eye, each time you enter. No need for extraordinary talent, only the correct understanding of the mechanics of power and how people react to presence. This is the moment you shift from the one waiting to be recognized to the one others must adjust themselves to fit. When you own the frame, you no longer enter a room, asking permission. You enter as the invisible master of the space. When you create scarcity, you are no longer caught in the vortex of meeting others' expectations. You make them wait, guess, and raise your value themselves. When you know how to stand next to power, you no longer wander lost in the crowd. You are reflected by the light of those who lead, and when you signal correctly, you no longer have to convince anyone of your value. They see it before you even open your mouth. From there, the effect becomes irreversible. Others look at you differently before you can say your first word. They see solidity in your eyes, purpose in your stride, stability in your breath. They react more cautiously, no longer viewing you as someone who can be dismissed, interrupted, or easily controlled. They begin to listen to your silence more than to others' words. A nod, a breath, a 3-second pause from you, all carry the weight of someone who knows their position and does not need to fight to hold it. The room changes to fit you. Those who once ignored you now become wary. Those who once saw you as background now wonder, when did he change? And those who once underestimated you are forced to re-examine every conclusion they ever drew. This is not magic. This is the restructuring of identity, based on the 4 Machiavellian pillars of power. But the most important thing is all of this change begins with you, not from talent, not from luck, not from anyone's favor. It begins with the decision to no longer live as the invisible. And because it begins with you, no one can take it away from you. If you are tired of waiting for talent to save you, if you are exhausted by the feeling of being undervalued, overlooked, dissolved in the crowd's noise, if you want to build status in a world that only cares about who is seen, not who deserves to be, then this is not just an ending. This is a summons. Ask yourself the question every Machiavellian must face. Who do I want to be in this room? Not the most skilled, but the heaviest. Not the loudest speaker, but the one whose silence carries gravity. Not the chosen one, but the one who chooses their own position. And if you are ready to step out of invisibility, ready to build status from zero without waiting for miracles, then this is the time. Subscribe to the channel right now, so you don't miss any power strategies. See you in the next video, where an even sharper version of you will continue to be forged.